George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire has a vast history which dates back thousands of years before the events of a Game of Thrones. But unfortunately, the show hasn't done a very good job of portraying all of this history, often leaving fans wondering who were the first men, the Andals, the children of the forest? What was the doom of Valyria? How did the Targaryens rise to power? What was the cause for Robert's rebellion? Well, let's delve into the world of Westeros. Throughout the video, I'm gonna be referring to the dates before Aegon's landing as BL and after Aegon's landing as AL, kinda like BC and AD. 12,000 BL. It all started when the first men arrived in Westeros via a naturally occurring land bridge that connects the continent with Essos. Before this, Westeros was inhabited by the children of the forest and possibly the giants in the far north. The first men brought with them their culture and religion, and also technology in the form of weapons. They started to claim the land for themselves by chopping down forests and making room for the settlements. This started displacing the original inhabitants, the children of the forest, as well as the revered weirwood trees which they have the ability to walk into and peer out of thanks to the carvings of the faces into them, which are shown in Winterfell throughout the show. This started a war between the children and the first men. Using their magic, the children smashed the land bridge, transforming it into the Stepstone Islands. But they were no match for the humans' superior strength and numbers. So the children create the White Walkers to defeat the first men. In the show, this first White Walker is believed to be the Night King. But in the books, the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, which was formed later to guard the wall, is seduced by a wildling woman from beyond the wall and becomes the Night King, with the Watch as his personal army. Anyway, this later backfires and the White Walkers turn on their masters. 10,000 BL. Eventually, the first men sign a pact with the children on the Isle of Faces, which brings about 2,000 years of peace in Westeros. The children agree to remain within the woods, while the first men vow to leave the forest, particularly the weirwoods, alone. Eventually, they even adopt the children's religion as their own, worshipping the gods of forest, stream and stone, a practice which remains in the North to this day. 8,000 BL. There is a long and terrible winter which lasts an entire generation. The White Walkers invade and nearly conquer all of Westeros. The others are finally defeated in the War for the Dawn by an alliance of men wielding fire and obsidian weapons led by a great hero who in an Eastern tradition is named Azor Ahai and wields a great sword of fire named Lightbringer, tempering it with the blood and possibly the soul of his wife Nisa Nisa. The first men and the children forge a military alliance and together build the wall and create the Night's Watch to guard it. The children provide the first brothers of the Watch with several hundred obsidian daggers, the only weapon known to injure the walkers. Sam killed a White Walker in Season 3 using an obsidian dagger. The designer of the wall, Brandon Stark, called Brand the Builder, also constructs Winterfell and becomes the first king in the north. The red priests and priestesses of the Lord of Light, such as Lady Melisandre, predict that the long night will one day return, followed shortly by Azor himself, who will be reincarnated to save mankind. 6,000 BL. 7 holy beings appear in the hills of Andalos on the eastern continent, apparently avatars of a supreme god. The people of the hills become their worshippers. The Andals, as they become known, invade Westeros with steel weapons and the new religion of the Faith of the Seven. They fight both the first men and the children of the forest. After centuries of fighting, a truce is eventually signed, resulting in the harmonious cohabitation of the land. The first men remain in the north, where they continue to pray to the old gods, while the newcomers take all the rest of the continent, establishing the new Faith of the Seven and the Six Kingdoms. Due to this war, the children of the forest completely disappear from the south of the wall. Soon, the humans believed them to be extinct and in time, just a myth. 5,000 BL. 1,000 years later, the shepherds of the lands of Valyria on the eastern continent of Essos discover dragons lairing in the 14 Fires, a great ring of volcanoes across the neck of the Valyrian Peninsula. Once the Valyrians learn how to employ magic to domesticate the massive beasts, they quickly established themselves as the greatest political and military power that the world has ever known. They defeat the eastern rival of Geese in warfare 5 times. The Valyrian freehold swells to include the former Giscari territory, including Slavers Bay, where Daenerys liberated the slaves in Season 3, and even extends all the way westward to the very edge of Westeros, forming the remote outpost of Dragonstone, which Daenerys recaptured in Season 7. 700 BL. The Valyrian freehold's slow westward expansion brings it to the lands watered by the great river Rhine, a vast waterway near the west coast of Essos. They destroy the city of Arnar when it refuses to surrender. Nymeria, warrior queen of the Rhoyna city-states, after whom Arya names a direwolf, evacuates her people in 10,000 ships that cross the narrow sea and land in Dorne. Winning an alliance with Lord Mors Martell, the Rhoyna unify the factious lands under the rule of Sunspear and establish House Martell as the ruling house of Dorne. Mars adopts the Rhoynish title Prince rather than King. Nymeria promotes her people's socially liberal culture, explaining why Dorne remains so unique among all the other kingdoms of Westeros, including the usage of prince for their monarchs instead of king. 500 BL. The Valyrian freehold conquers much of what is now the area of the southern Free Cities. A religious sect, the Moonsingers, lead many thousands of refugees north to a remote northern lagoon protected by encircling mountains and mists, and there found the secret cities of Braavos. They later built the Titan of Braavos, a great statue which also serves as defensive fortification. 100 BL. After 5 millennia of unbroken dominance, the Valyrian freehold abruptly falls when a disaster of unknown nature strikes Valyria, turning the peninsula into a series of islands. The Valyrian peninsula is shattered and the city of Valyria is laid to waste, although not completely destroyed. The dragons of Valyria are virtually wiped out. The Valyrian freehold fractures apart. The western coastal cities become independent, naming themselves the Free Cities. Braavos reveals itself to the other cities, eventually becoming the most powerful of them through their vast fleet and economic power. The cities of Slavers Bay become independent again, although Giscari power begins building again in the south. The warrior nomads of the vast eastern plains become more emboldened by the fall of Valyria, and their dominant tribe, the Dothraki, begin raiding the surrounding lands. Just 12 years before the doom of Valyria, Daenerys Targaryen had a prophetic vision, a family trait that would continue on down through the centuries, of the apocalyptic fall of the freehold. She begs her father to move House Targaryen to the remote safety of Dragonstone, which he does, saving his family and allowing them to become the sole remaining standard bearer of the former empire. The Targaryens remain safe on Dragonstone, the guardians of possibly the last 3 dragons in the Western world. All Valyrian spells, knowledge and recorded history are forever lost. 0 AL. The Targaryens continue to expand their empire. Aegon turns his back on Essos and focuses on uniting all of Westeros into one giant kingdom. Aegon's conquest sees him and his 2 sister wives, Visenya and Rhaenys, and their 3 dragons, Balerion, Vhagar, and Marexis, respectively, supported by a comparatively small number of soldiers, overpower 6 of the 7 kingdoms, with some of the competing kings being slain in battle and others voluntarily submitting to King Aegon I. Notably, Torrance Stark, the king in the north, bends the knee and thus gets the nickname the King Who Knelt. Jon mentions this in his meeting with Daenerys in Season 7. After just 2 short years, the 7 kingdoms of Westeros come under the rule of the Targaryens. The Iron Throne is assembled out of the melted down swords of all of Aegon's fallen foes. King's Landing, the new capital city, is constructed on the spot of his initial landing and the beginning of his campaign, and the former kings are given new titles, such as the Starks, who used to reign as kings in the north but are now called the Wardens of the North. But Aegon was unable to conquer Dorne, and it remained independent until 187 years later, the then current Prince of Dorne married a Targaryen princess. 37 AL. Upon Aegon Targaryen's death, his son Aenys takes the throne and unintentionally agitates the fate of the 7, which at this time has something of a large standing army that calls itself the Faith Militant. The final straw comes when King Aenys marries his son to his daughter. Although it's a long-standing Targaryen tradition to intermarry, the fate denounces it as an offense to the gods. War follows, lasting for 7 long and bloody years. 48 AL. It's not until Jaehaerys I inherits the throne that an end to the uprising arrives, suddenly and peacefully. The new king negotiates a peace treaty with the High Septon in exchange for Jaehaerys formally pardoning all mutineers and swearing an oath that the Iron Throne will always defend the faith. The faith militant is disbanded and the practice of religious trials is ended. This status quo lasts for the next 2.5 centuries until Cersei Lannister reinstates the faith militant, and we all know how that went down. 130 AL. The Dance of Dragons is the first major Westerosi civil war between Aegon II and his half-sister Rhaenyra Targaryen for control of the Iron Throne. Many lesser branches of House Targaryen and most of the dragons are extinguished in the conflict. After Rhaenyra's death, the war continues in the name of her son, Aegon III. When Aegon II dies without issue, the war ends by default, with Aegon III being crowned. The last Targaryen dragon dies during Aegon III's reign, earning him the name Dragonbane. The dragon leaves behind 3 stone eggs, which the Targaryens fail to hatch. 161 to 171 AL. The reign of Baelor the Blessed, Septon and King. Baelor builds a huge sept in King's Landing, which afterwards is called the Sept of Baelor, and becomes the seat of the faith in Westeros. This is the same sept which Cersei blows up in Season 6. 260 AL. Fast forward 100 years, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen is born to Aegon V's grandson, Prince Aerys, and his sister wife, Rhaella. Jaehaerys II succeeds Aegon, but dies only 3 years later. Aerys II becomes king, naming the young Tywin Lannister as his hand. 275 AL. King Aerys rejects Tywin Lannister's offer of his daughter Cersei for Prince Rhaegar, instead marrying Rhaegar to Princess Elia Martell of Dorne. 281 AL. About 20 years before the events of the show, it was the year of False Spring. Lord Went holds a great tourney at Harrenhal, where Prince Rhaegar Targaryen distinguishes himself in battle, but names Lyanna Stark of Winterfell, betrothed to Robert Baratheon, Queen of Love and Beauty, rather than his own wife Elia Martell. A year later, Rhaegar Targaryen, the Crown Prince, abducts Lyanna, Eddard's sister, and proceeds to hold her hostage. However, this is only the official summary of events as told by Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark after the fact. In actuality, Lyanna went with Rhaegar willingly as they were secretly in love, even though he was already married and had 2 children of his own. Lord Rickard Stark, the Warden of the North, and his older son and heir, Brandon Stark, demand justice. King Aerys, the Mad King, calls them to King's Landing only to torture and execute them. Additionally, in order to prevent further rebellion, he demands the heads of Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon, who are being fostered at the Eyrie under the watchful eye of Lord Jon Arryn, the Warden of the East. Houses Stark, Baratheon, and Arryn openly declare war. Robert's rebellion, as it comes to be known, lasts just for 1 year and results in the deaths of Prince Rhaegar, who is killed by Robert in single combat, and the Mad King by Sir Jaime Lannister, a member of his own King's Guard, who stabs him in the back when the Mad King threatens to blow up King's Landing with wildfire. The murder of Rhaegar's wife, Elia Martell, the sister of Prince Doran and Oberyn Martell, and her 2 infants by the Mountain, and the ultimate scattering of Aerys' 2 remaining children, Prince Viserys and Princess Daenerys, who flee with the secret assistance of Lord Varys to Essos. After the war's conclusion, Lyanna Stark also dies in a mysterious event, which we now know to be the birth of her son, Jon, at the Tower of Joy in Dorne, where she was secretly being held. With the fall of House Targaryen, House Baratheon rises to become the only second royal family, with Robert assuming the Iron Throne and Jon Arryn becoming Hand of the King. It is Jon Arryn who makes the marriage arrangements with Cersei Lannister, joining 2 of the most powerful houses in all of Westeros. 298 AL. Murder of Jon Arryn, leading to the events of Game of Thrones. So, this is it. A brief history of Westeros. Please share your thoughts in the comment section down below. This video took me nearly 2 weeks to plan, research, record and edit. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your friends and subscribe for future content. Thank you for watching.